Hey there, thanks for joining us on the Chief Executive Aviator. I'm Simon Turner, your host, and if you're wondering what we're all about, well, we're pilots who happen to run businesses, or maybe we're business people who happen to fly. Either way, we've figured out that flying gives us a serious edge. Every week, I sit down with another pilot entrepreneur or executive who's discovered that their plane isn't just some cool ride, it's actually a secret weapon for growing their business. We're talking real stories about landing deals and actual landings, expanding markets, and yes, still making it home in time for dinner. Whether you're already flying for business or you're just dreaming about it, you're going to hear some pretty amazing stories about how aviation changes the trajectory of lives and businesses every day. So get your pre-flight done. We've got a great conversation headed your way. Rich, welcome to Chief Executive Aviator, and unlike a lot of our guests who are entrepreneurs who happen to fly, your business really is flying, and you've helped a lot of entrepreneurs get into flying and use flying as a tool in their business. Tell us a little bit about your journey into aviation and how you turned your passion into a profession.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on your podcast. You know, I was fortunate. I have an older brother that's 13 years older than me. And he got into flying when my dad was taking lessons. My dad never finished, but my older brother, caught the bug, and he got his license when he was 17, so I was 4.
Uh-huh.
And he, you know, I was just always around airplanes. He was in the military, flew in the military, and, you know, airplanes were just part of my life from a pretty young age. And always had a passion for it, always loved airplanes. I kind of got sidetracked by athletics, you know, when I was younger.
Yeah.
And once my athletic career was over in college, I kind of, you know, I got my license before college, but I really, you know, put all my focus on flying and became a flight instructor in my early 20s. You know, started flight instructing and, you know, wasn't sure which direction I wanted to go in aviation, but through a couple of, I think, serendipitous events, kind of got on a track of aircraft sales, got hired by Cessna, and that's really kind of where my aircraft sales career took off. But I did quite a bit of flight instructing, you know, primary flight instructing on my way to selling airplanes and demonstrating airplanes. So, you know, and it just, the sales component of my career, you know, when you're selling airplanes, and early on I was selling 172s and 182s, it just, everybody needed a checkout. So, you know, that's where it evolved to.
How cool. And you're a flight instructor underneath it all. You're a aircraft salesman kind of on the top, but you're also a content creator at Fly with Rich, the YouTube channel. We'll put a link for people to go and check you out, and that's how I found you. I watch all your videos. Sort of think of the challenges that you sort of faced in maybe not becoming a pilot, but kind of finding your way in aviation and ending up where you are. You know, a lot of people end up in the airlines and that sort of thing, but you've taken quite a different path.
Yeah, I don't know that I had the right, you know, personality for the airline path in aviation. You know, I probably would have pursued a military career, but I lost my left eye when I was a little kid. And so that kind of precluded me from, you know, going into the military, and probably even some concern about, you know, getting an airline job.
Yep.
But so I think, you know, subconsciously probably, and made me kind of look at other less conventional career paths for aviation because of that. It's never really been a limitation for me. I've never had any issues, you know, getting a medical or flying or anything. But I think when you're thinking about a career, it probably comes into play. You know, a pilot that, you know, is blind in one eye may not be able to pursue the normal path. So that was part of it, I think. And but I think probably more than that was really my personality. You know, I just think I wouldn't have been as fulfilled, you know, doing an airline type career. Not that it's just different. Some people are cut out for that. I probably wasn't, and I ultimately ended up enjoyed flight instructing and also, you know, kind of the variety of airplanes that I get to fly.
Yep.
But that was certainly a challenge, and like everybody, you know, it's expensive to learn to fly, and, you know, and trying to make it, you know, and get the ratings and get the experience and all that type of thing is always challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of at what point did you realize, hey, I could build a business around this, selling planes, building content, that sort of thing, rather than you know, maybe it being a hobby on the side or that sort of thing?
Yeah, I got in aircraft sales with Cessna Aircraft Company, and I think that really, we had a lot of dealers, and I would deal with our dealers,
Yeah.
and I would see them, and what they were doing, and I was involved in, helping them sell airplanes, and that's probably when the light went off to some degree to be, independent or try to build an independent business, not continue with the manufacturer. I had a great career at Cessna, but
Yeah.
I think I really wanted something a little bit more, and I was always exposed to these aircraft dealers coming in to pick up airplanes and talking to them, and then helping them demonstrate airplanes and visiting with customers, and I really felt like that was probably a better fit for me
Yeah.
than being a manufacturer's rep, and so that's really how that I transitioned, into that kind of a dealer broker role.
Cool. Now you're a multi-type rated pilot. You're flying. We just talked about this before we started recording. You've flown an entire catalog of airplanes in one week.
Yeah.
Walk me through what a typical day kind of looks like for you. You're balancing flight instruction, content creation, running a business, all that sort of stuff. What does it look like for you? Because it sounds like you're running a million miles an hour.
Yeah, it is pretty busy. I try to, like when I'm training now in the environment that I train in, it's typically, it's not for a couple hours. It's usually a day long, type of event where we do, ground school and
Yeah.
then, some flying. So usually I try to segment my schedule with, flying days and office days, and then, you got to weave in travel in there as well. But
Yeah.
it can be challenging, but because there's such a difference, I think in flying when I'm training people, it's like I have to kind of almost, I don't shut the phone off, but I have to really transition to just being in that environment of doing flight training, and
Yeah.
then try to set office days so that I don't, I don't kind of weave both of them together. And then the content creation really comes as a byproduct of what I do anyway. Like I'm in airplanes all the time, or I'm taking them from point A to point B, or test flying an airplane for somebody, or checking somebody out. So the content creation just becomes part of just putting the camera up and
Yeah.
getting it rigged up so I can record what I'm doing. And that really, the genesis of that was really exposing airplanes to the market in a different way, and trying to capture what YouTube, the power of YouTube, to be able to show an airplane in a different way rather than just a static picture or a
Yeah.
walk around on a in a hangar someplace. I thought people would get a another uh, angle or perspective on airplanes to see somebody actually flying it. So and it weaves into my schedule and what I do pretty well. So it's the editing is the is the challenge.
I can imagine. I mean, your videos are some of the best on YouTube, and the detail in which you go in. You say you get to see you flying the aircraft. You get to get a feel of kind of what it's like in the cabin and that sort
Yeah,
of thing. You just don't get
yeah,
that static pictures. You don't get to kind of like see some of the detail and the nuance that you're able to surface in that content.
yeah. I think that's true. And a long time ago, kind of a mentor in aircraft sales for me told me that you have to. I sell airplanes to people who are going to fly them. That's really my market. And he said you have to put people in the pilot seat and let them fly and let them experience the airplane. You can't really
Yeah.
do a really good demo flight for an owner pilot if they're sitting in the right seat watching you fly. You have to give them the experience, and I found that to be true, in what I do, or I think it's the most effective way to do it. And I've always enjoyed, selling what I fly.
Yeah.
But YouTube takes it to another dimension. It's not the real thing, but at least I think it gives people a little bit more of a perspective on the airplane.
Yeah, absolutely. Many of our listeners are business executives, entrepreneurs that really use the aircraft to expand business reach and, you know, look for opportunities and that sort of thing. From your perspective, and I know you, from looking at your YouTube channel, you've got a lot of entrepreneurs and executives and surgeons and all that sort of thing that are working with you to get into an aircraft. But what sort of advantages do you see business leaders kind of gain when they become a pilot rather than just chartering a flight or jumping on commercial, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Well, I've had a front row seat to so many entrepreneurs, business people, CEOs, executives that have utilized airplanes. And a lot of times there's always the interest in aviation early on, like I had. And,
Yeah,
time gets soaked up building a business, and then, it's always something they wanted to do. But because I sell airplanes that people generally fly, they don't typically hire a pilot, and that goes all the way up to the bigger 525 citation.
yeah,
I train people all the way up through the 525s, and these are airplanes that people will fly themselves. And
yeah,
so I see so many times, a busy schedule, a demanding business, and the need for travel combined with somebody's interest in aviation, and then to help them develop that avenue to where they can be flying their own airplane to business meetings and the access of so many airports in the US that they might not have access to without a general aviation airplane. And I mean, I can't put into words how much positive uh, almost all of my clients get out of not only the benefit of the travel.
yeah,
It's the benefit of what aviation and being a pilot does in their life in terms of just kind of rejuvenating them to get to grow the business and to use the airplane more, and the component of being a pilot and what they learn, and the additional demands. While it might sound odd, but I think the additional demands that they put on themselves
yeah,
makes them more productive in other things they do. And that's something that I have really witnessed, and has been profound to me to watch that happen. And it's always nice to see them use an airplane for business and travel and expand their business that way. But it's more, the more rewarding part for me is to see these people, busy CEOs, use their airplane and they're flying, and it like reignites them to expand their business. So that's been really cool to see, and I see it all the time.
yeah. Very common thread that we definitely see with the guests that we've got on here, and I've experienced similar myself. And it kind of brings a whole lot of extra focus and clarity to a lot of things, and yeah, it sort of becomes part of your identity.
Yeah.
Certainly, the best pilots that I've met so far, it's where it's become part of their identity and part of their kind of work that they do. Basically, is flying, and yeah, it's pretty amazing to see that.
Yeah,
And
and with that comes, I have this discussion with these entrepreneurs, CEOs all the time. You really have to, if you had you got a demanding schedule and a busy day at work, and it went a little bit later, and you're in that situation where it's 6 o'clock and you can use your airplane and be home the same day.
yeah,
You have to also be really conscious of that, crossing over the line of putting too much demands on yourself.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so we try to spend a lot of time talking to my clients about that. And generally everybody has a really healthy view of that, and it works. But it's something, all the good, you also have to consider that, and then don't push it too far.
yeah, absolutely. And certainly, some of the things that I've seen and I try to practice is if I've got a big day like that and I'm going to be heading home in the evening or whatever, it's just like even just taking another pilot with me that can, fly right seat or bring my CFI along for the
That's
day and
right.
the day
Yeah.
rate, and you get a bit of extra instruction, and it just adds to a layer of safety. And it's in the scheme of things really not that
Yeah.
expensive. So,
Yeah, and oftentimes these guys they're able to kind of set the schedule,
yep,
and so they can you can often make the schedule so that it fits into being able to use the airplane the way you want to use it. So I mean that's
yep,
I think a small component of something that that gets in the way a little bit from time to time, but it's always something I think it needs to be reinforced, because these
yep,
people that are flying these airplanes around, and you can probably attest to this yourself. It can be demanding, and especially if the weather changes, it can put a lot of demands on what you're doing.
totally. Yeah, the weather popping up out of nowhere or congested
Yeah,
airspace, and vectored around. Uh, yeah,
right. Right.
Can be a lot. So yeah, you got to be
You know,
mindful
and
of
the
that.
other component, these airplanes are so automated now
Hmm.
that people, you might make a flight that you wouldn't have made because you have the automation, you have the autopilot. Now you have auto throttle, and you have fully coupled go around approaches, and
Hmm.
it's potential there to get lured into a flight that if you had to make it with less automation, you might say, that's too much, I'm not going to do it. But then all the automation could lead you down a path, and I think that's something in the industry we're going to have to uh, consider, because the automation is great until it isn't,
Yeah.
until it doesn't work. And if you're not prepared for that, it can be a real mess.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think probably the biggest when you get lulled into that kind of like false sense of security, the biggest like shock is when all of a sudden you lose something, or
Yeah,
you
that's exactly right.
using the heading bug to follow a heading, and then all of a sudden, hey, guess what? That fails in the autopilot, and you got to hand fly it, or
Yeah, right.
it's it's
Often at the most challenging part of the flight.
yeah. I had one of these only 4 or 5 weeks ago where the heading bug for some reason failed on the autopilot, and I was getting vectored around, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, like it's you got to kind of rethink how you
Yeah,
do this, and it's in you're kind of like at the base of the clouds, and it's yeah, it's a bit of a shock,
yeah,
but it's a good reminder of like, hey, actually got to practice this stuff and
that's right.
through it, that none of this automation is going to work, or you're going to lose partial panel, or those kind of things.
Yeah, and something like you just said, losing a heading bug, that's not necessarily losing all the automation, but that's something that can really, throw a twist into a vectored approach. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
And if you
so
haven't practiced hand flying those approaches in a period of time, it's kind of like you got to dig that back out of your muscle memory. All
yeah,
that
that's
stuff.
right. That's right.
Speaking of kind of like all the advances in technology and different aircraft and that sort of thing, you have a lot of different aircraft that you've got experience flying and experience selling. How do you sort of help clients that have all these different missions kind of like hone in on what type of aircraft suits not only their mission but their capabilities and their budget? Like, how do you think through that conundrum to find them the right ship?
Yeah, that's a fun part of what I do. I think is to be able to talk about a lot of different airplanes that I've had access to and have been able to build experience in, and to
Yeah,
give that perspective to people that might be considering, or they're not exactly sure which airplane is going to be the best. Often, the mission, the budget, pilot, skill level, that those all drive, pretty specifically towards, one uh, category of airplanes. But oftentimes people are they're kind of like, hey, I don't really know exactly what the right airplane for me is, and so many people now too are educated on YouTube. I
yeah,
compare people coming to me to talk about airplanes and what might be the best, and the basic fundamental knowledge base they have versus now. I mean,
yeah,
it's like night and day, because there's so
yeah,
much information now and so much perspectives that you can get off of YouTube, for instance. And so,
yeah,
people are generally more educated and kind of have a pretty good idea what they want now versus,
yeah,
say, 10, 15 years ago. But there's still a lot of nuances there, and insurance and
yeah.
airports you might be visiting and all those kinds of things. But there's a lot of factors that we look at, but it's, that's kind of the fun part. It's fun to wade through all that information and figure out, what might be the best airplane for
Yeah.
a particular client.
Awesome. And we talked obviously about kind of like all the automation technology kind of potentially lulling you into a false sense of security and that sort of thing. But what technical or technological innovations kind of in the GA space are you most excited about? And you probably have more hands-on experience than most people of different types of technology in all these different planes. But tell me a little bit about kind of what you're most excited about that you're seeing and that may be coming in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's probably um, technology that would help to, potentially reduce, the cost of airplane ownership.
Uh,
Maybe, engine technology that's getting better.
yep.
Development of potentially diesel engines,
Yeah.
because I see aviation, general aviation. It's look at some indicators like what the number of airplanes manufacturers are producing. It's we're in decline from that perspective. So and probably a lot of the decline is driven by the high cost, the barrier to entry. I mean,
Mm.
it's tough to go out and get a license anyway, but then you have the once you get it, what do you do, and the high cost of ownership relative to the masses. So any technology that can help to drive those costs down, it gets exciting to me.
Mhm.
But I don't, I mean, obviously, all the automation, the advance in avionics and capability of the autopilots and FADEC engines, and I mean,
Yeah.
all that stuff is exciting to me to a point to where it's like it's the technology is creeping into the cockpit so much that
Yeah.
you fly an airplane with auto throttle, and it's almost like, well, when do I get to fly? I mean, you're
Yeah.
managing the system, and the auto throttle is doing a really good job, and it takes you all the way down to basically to minimums.
Yeah.
you know it's kind of a double-edged sword. I love the technology, and I think it's the advancement I've seen in technology in the cockpit in my career flying it's incomprehensible. But I don't know if it's as I get maybe a little older, I don't know. I still like to fly. I still like to get my hands on the yoke or the stick and the throttle and fly
Yeah.
the airplane. And it seems like we're losing that. And I think there's a real danger zone there for, you know, so much automation, but when things go wrong, we're back to hand flying the airplane and we lose that skill. But generally
Yeah.
speaking, I mean, I'm very excited about all the technology that's being offered, in airplanes today. It's a slow advancement with the airplane. Obviously, the avionics it's been pretty steep here in the last 10, 15 years. But
Yeah.
when you look at engine technology, especially in the piston engine market, it's been a pretty slow
Oh yeah.
technological advancement, and hopefully that can change, and it can at least drive some costs out of airplanes and flying.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Personally experienced that. My latest annual, exhaust needed a few replacement parts in the exhaust, and it's $15,000 worth of work.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, that's right. That's right.
it's
Yeah,
kind of crazy because there's only one supplier that does that exhaust still on an
yeah,
old Lycoming that's in my plane, and it's God, it's frustrating.
yeah.
That
It
stuff.
is, and that's a real challenge the industry faces, especially as the fleet ages and we're not putting new airplanes into the market nearly at the pace we were, for instance, in the late '70s.
Yeah, it does feel, yeah, just over the last couple of weeks, I've met with a number of people that are working on new engine technology and that sort of thing. So it feels like it's not so far away. And there's, even some big advancements. The new G kind of PT6 competitor that's in that
Yeah,
Denali,
yeah.
280 less parts and way, certainly sounds like it's going to have a longer kind of TBO and different kind of cycles and stuff like that. That'll save a lot of money in the long run. But yeah, it's definitely a big problem in our world.
Yeah, yeah. I hope it continues and we can kind of arrest this decline in
Yep.
the volume of airplanes that are entering the market and pilots that are flying. I flew with a young CFI the other day, and I was asking him, like, what's the mix of new students. He was telling me there's a lot of new students coming into to the school and
Yeah.
learning to fly. He attributed a lot of it to social media, which was interesting to me. But when I asked him what's the mix of people on a career track for pilots versus guys older who have a successful business, they want to get a license to use it in their business, and he's like, he goes, man, I've been flight instructing for 3 years now, and I can't remember one person that came in that wasn't like a career oriented pilot.
Yeah.
And back when I was flight instructing, it was a fair number of people, coming into that type of environment. So, um, I hope that not only with airplane production increases, but also, new pilot starts and the demographic of those new pilot starts.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to jump into the lightning round here and ask a few quick questions for you. What was the
Okay.
first aircraft you ever soloed in?
Soloed in a Cessna 152.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hope there wasn't too much headwind, but
Yeah, a lot of. I almost soloed a Christian Eagle.
oh,
That
cool.
was
Yeah,
what I was. Yeah, my brother had the airplane, and I was training, right about the time I was ready to solo it,
yeah.
I I we had engine problems, so I ended up soloing a Cessna 152.
Nice. Dream aircraft to own. Money is no object. What are you going to fly?
Man, that is such a tough one. Probably a P-51 Mustang. Yeah,
Nice. Yeah, we
yeah.
got one of those on our field here that flew over the over Tokyo Bay on the day of the surrender, and it's the same. It's a beautiful.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
yeah. That's an easy one to love. That's a lot of people's favorite airplane. But I think, yeah, if I had to have one airplane, it'd probably be that one. It's kind of selfish, because it's probably a single seat airplane too, unless you get
yeah, yeah,
one with one of the trainers.
totally. Most beautiful airport or landing location you've ever experienced. Now you have a lot of them in your neck of the woods, but yeah, what's the most beautiful one you've gone and landed at?
Man, that's a tough one. Probably in Alaska.
Yeah,
Wasn't even really an airport. Off airport strip
yeah,
near a lake. I don't even know if it had a name. In the U.S., Sedona and
uh-huh.
Catalina. It's hard for me to name one, as you can tell.
Yes, no, absolutely, I can imagine. If
Meigs
you, if,
Field, Meigs Field in Chicago, they shut that down. That was a really beautiful airport. Inner city airport, right in buildings. That was another beautiful one. Unfortunately, you can't land at that one anymore. It's not an airport.
you might be able to get a cub in there or something like that,
Yeah,
but sure you get a big fine for it. But if you couldn't be a pilot, you couldn't be in aviation. What would have you been doing?
man, probably something in sports.
Yeah,
Maybe something in sports. Yeah, I had a good athletic career and I had a lot of fun. So probably something in sports.
awesome. And favorite airport restaurant that we should all go check out.
Probably the Waypoint Cafe in Camarillo.
I've seen quite a few videos of people going there. I've
Yeah,
never myself. It looks
that's
awesome.
that's a really good spot to go. Great airport and a great restaurant.
Nice. And last question for you: what's next for Flying with Rich, the channel, and for your business? What are you excited about? Where are you going next?
I'm gonna keep trying to bring more content. Maybe thinking about doing a little bit more, uh, involving a little bit more, pilot training.
Yeah.
Tech. Just tips and different things about the different airplanes that I operated from a training perspective. But the real emphasis will be featuring the airplanes and kind of letting the airplanes speak for themselves. I always wanted the channel to really be about the airplanes, not so much about me, more the airplanes. And so just trying to make those videos, you know, productive and valuable for people, and then expanding my area of expertise with airplanes. I got a pretty tight knit group of airplanes that I focus on, and trying to get into some other airframes, that type of thing. But really doing what I'm doing, I love what I do. Obviously, it's a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
I don't want to change too much, because I've got it. I really enjoy the way things are going with my career right now.
Love it. And if people want to find you, obviously on YouTube, but where else do they look? And what sort of stuff do you do for pilots and aspiring pilots?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to reach. My contact information is all over the internet,
Yeah.
and I always I do some I don't really do a lot of primary training anymore, but almost every airplane I sell, there's some component of training that I do, and that's
Yeah.
probably really what sets me apart. Is you if you if you buy an airplane from me, there's typically a transition um, need there,
Yep.
and so I can help you through that process to to buy an airplane and then also transition, get a type rating, or meet an insurance requirement on a lot of different airplanes
Yep.
uh, that I deal with. So that's mainly what I do.
Yep. Brilliant. Well, we'll put some links to direct people where to find you, because it's been amazing watching you coach some people and get them into new aeroplanes and get their previous plane sold and that sort
Yeah,
of thing. We'll
yeah.
make sure we link that in the show notes. But Rich, it's been awesome to get to chat to you, learn a little bit about your career and everything that you do. And yeah, thanks for creating great content, and we look forward to seeing more.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for these podcasts. I listen to a bunch of them. They're really interesting, so I appreciate that as well.
Thank you. All right, Rich, have a great rest of your day, and yeah, we'll speak soon.
Okay, thanks again.
Hey, thanks for flying with us today. If you're getting value from these conversations with other pilot entrepreneurs and executives, do me a really quick favor. Hit that subscribe button or the follow button, depending on what app you're using, so you'll never miss another episode. And if you've got an extra minute and you loved us, drop us a 5-star review. Those reviews help other aviation-minded business folk find us, and honestly, they really just make my day. What about you? Have you got a story about using your plane to grow your business, or maybe someone you know? Well, shoot me a message on X at Simon G. Turner or at the Chief Executive Aviator podcast, or pop me an email, simon@turneraircraft.com. See you on the next Chief Executive Aviator.